Hi, I'm Heidi Otway, your host for this conversation on cannabis virtual forum brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative at Florida A&M University. In this conversation, we're talking about the business of marijuana and its impact on minority communities. Medical marijuana is legal in Florida and several other states, and it's one of the fastest growing industries in the U.S. So it's no surprise that the Mary program at FAMU gets a lot of questions and requests for information from people of color and others who want to know more about opportunities in this billion-dollar industry. So let's talk and learn more about this subject from our panel of professionals, entrepreneurs, and subject matter experts on the business of marijuana and its impact on minority communities. On our panel, we have Roz McCarthy, the founder and CEO of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, a national nonprofit organization headquartered in Central Florida with a presence in 27 other states. Roz, welcome to the program. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the focus of Minorities for Medical Marijuana.
Thank you, Heidi. I'm Roz McCarthy, the founder and the CEO of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. We are the nation's largest community-based organization fighting for inclusion, education, policy as it relates to the cannabis industry for communities of color. We have 27 chapters throughout the country, 3 international chapters. I'm proud to say that we have a FAMU law chapter of M4MM, as well as Southern University. I'm so happy to be here with you and can't wait for the discussion.
All right, thank you. And our next panelist is Erik, the board chair of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. He's also a consultant and an entrepreneur in the cannabis industry. And Erik, we're going to talk about your businesses later in the program, but tell us about your experience as chair of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Oh, you're on mute.
It's such an honor to serve as the board chair for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. It's not my first endeavor in this space, but it's been one of my most beloved endeavors. We've had an opportunity to fight for people in the communities that I grew up in, fight to give them voice and make sure that we create a space for them in this industry. So in my role as a board chair, my responsibility is really and truly to help usher in the resources that the organization needs to be able to do what we do. To be able to create impact in communities across the country. So I'm always excited to be on, live with Roz, my sister. She's such a inspiration in this space for so many. And so I'm just glad to be here today and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. And rounding out our panel is Rebecca Colett, the founder and CEO of Collexium, a company that grows and processes cannabis. She is a graduate of Florida A&M University and the first African-American woman-owned and operated cannabis cultivation brand in the Midwest. Rebecca, welcome to the program. Tell us a little more about yourself.
Hey, Heidi, and good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor and pleasure to be coming back home to the Florida A&M University on the highest of 7 hills in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm so happy to be here. It's like homecoming all over again. I'm the CEO of Collexium. Collexium is a cultivation and processing brand based in Detroit, Michigan. We serve currently medical patients throughout the Metro Detroit area, soon to be adult use this spring, and we're so excited about what the Midwest cannabis market has to offer. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're so happy to have you all today as our guests. And to everyone joining us on this live forum, please share, post, and tag a friend on Facebook to have them join this conversation. And if you're on YouTube, share the link so others can join us as well. During the forum, we want you to send us your questions in the comment box, and we'll do our best to have our panelists answer them, or the Mary team will respond in the comments. We also want you to tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comments. When you complete the survey, your name will be entered into a drawing for tickets to an iHeart music event courtesy of our partners at iHeartMedia. Now, let's dive into our conversation. All of our panelists, as you've heard, have made inroads in the billion-dollar cannabis industry, and they're working to open the door for others. So let's start with the first question. Roz, let's start with you. Tell us how you got into the cannabis industry.
Sure. In 2016, the state of Florida literally was walking and talking and basically creating conversation about having a medical marijuana program in the state. And this in May of 2016, as I'm hearing the conversation, as I'm seeing the news media address, are we going to vote yes for this amendment? We're going to vote no. Is it a good thing for the state of Florida? I really felt that, as you were seeing the momentum, that it was an overwhelmingly support for having a medical marijuana program. My past experience in healthcare, working with a pharmaceutical company, working as a senior executive for an end-of-life company, also as a consultant for nonprofits and working in this space, I really felt like, man, if we're going to have this legalization in Florida, how are we going to make sure that communities of color have access to information, to education, to the jobs, to the economic prosperity, and who is going to deliver that or be the funnel for that? And is it going to be someone that we trust? And literally, Heidi, I just created this, sitting on my sofa, thinking about, man, I write so many grants and I was working on different things from a grant perspective. How nice would it be to have a nonprofit that focuses on the medical marijuana industry for minorities? And so Minorities for Medical Marijuana was built. It came to me from the belly on up. And we are now 5 years. We're getting ready to celebrate our 5-year anniversary next month. In May. And and we have grown. I took a gamble on it. I pushed all in. I'm on the backside of 50. I wasn't at the time, but I am now. And so with that being said, it was a risk and it was scary, but it was the right thing to do. And I'm so proud of the work we've done thus far.
Okay. Thank you. Erik, how'd you get into
that? Absolutely, man. It's funny. I started in the industry just a year prior to Roz with my art company, Art 420. And we held our first annual Art 420 Cannabis Inspired Art Show, where we use fine art to challenge the stereotypes about cannabis users, to create a safe space for people who were not users, but who were curious about the plant, but wanted to come and learn. And so we put them in the same room with artists. We put them in the same room with patients, with doctors, lawyers, people in the space, advocates, so that they can learn and kind of remove the stigma of the plant. And as I was promoting my business, I realized that minorities were in large part missing. They weren't at the conferences I was attending. They weren't in any large number anywhere that you went in the space. And so I can remember there was MJ Biz here, which is one of the largest cannabis conferences across the country. It was here in Orlando, Florida. And I went, and I remember someone came up to me and they asked me, hey, a black guy with locks, where are the rest of you? Why aren't the rest of you taking advantage of this industry? And that was the day I became an advocate in the space. And so using my platform of an art show, we decided we were going to do something to educate minorities. And as I was promoting that event, someone reached out to me and said, hey, you should know this lady by the name of Roz McCarthy. She's doing, something very similar. Perhaps you guys should work together. Little did we know we lived in the same city. We're thinking the same thing at the same time and hadn't met each other yet. And so, she and I met. I remember that day when I came to her office and we talked, and she shared with me what her vision and her plan was. And I said to her that day, hey, listen, if you're going to commit to that, then that means I don't have to start a nonprofit. I will pour everything I have into you and help you get this going. And here, like she said, here we are 5 years later. The organization is doing very, very well and creating impact across the country. So that's kind of how I got my start in this space, if you will.
All right. Thank you, Erik. And Rebecca, you're breaking down barriers up there in the Midwest. Tell us about how you got into the industry.
Yeah, well, really from a medical patient standpoint, I use cannabis myself as a medical patient to treat many ailments and have many personal praise reports and testimonies. And then I was able to treat my dad, who was a veteran. He passed away 3 years ago, but at the time he was a veteran and struggling with so many chronic ailments and was on like 15 opioids at a time. And I just kind of became really passionate about advocating for plant medicine. And as I kind of dig deep further, I realized like how veterans, some people that have served our country, left their families for years, don't even have access to smoke a joint. I mean, they can dope themselves up with 15 pills a day, but they can't even smoke a joint. So I just became really passionate about helping guys like my dad, other veterans. And then as I started going to cannabis conferences and wanting to, just learn more, I didn't see me. Just like Erik and Roz said, I didn't see me. And I've been consuming cannabis for a while. And what I know is that usually those rooms are very diverse. They look just like the world, a melting pot. However, at these cannabis conferences and lobby days, none of us were there. Or maybe I was the only one, or maybe it was 3 of us and we huddled together. And I thought that was an issue. So I just started becoming really passionate about advocating for the underdog. I've always been like that. So yeah, here we are years later, kind of decided to take the business and licensing and operating route because I saw there weren't many Black women in cultivation. And Michigan has been very, very forward thinking about home cultivation, medical cultivation, patients, and welcomed us into the city of Detroit. So I'm very proud that we are able to produce medicine that helps people every single day.
So let's talk a little bit about the different opportunities for people to kind of get into the industry. Rebecca, you talked about your experience. Erik, you talked about yours, and Roz, you talked about the work you all are doing. In our previous conversations, you all said that there are like 2 lanes to the marijuana industry. You have the folks who touch the plant, and then you have the ancillary businesses. Can you all talk a little bit about that? Rebecca, maybe you can talk about it because you actually touch the plant.
Yes.
And there are, and we already know the data that in this industry, the majority of entrepreneurs and processors are less than 4% are non-white. So you're in this really small minority. Yeah. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So my partner and I decided to go the plant touching route and be licensed operators. One of the reasons is because as caregivers for about 9-10 years, we recognized that a lot of the commercial cannabis on the market was full of toxins, mold, harmful pesticides. And what I know about caring for veterans and elderly people, I mean, if somebody has a chronic condition, you can't mess with that medicine. You can't spray some artificial color or odor on it. So we kind of saw a gap in the market for organic produce, and there were no people that kind of looked like us. So in Michigan, at least, we have 5 license types, which are cultivators, which are you grow the cannabis. We have processors or manufacturers, which means you break down that cannabis into other products like oils, edibles, tinctures. You have safety and compliance facilities, which means you test the cannabis. I think one thing that's really important is in the regulated cannabis market, everything is tested. Cannabis is tested more strenuous than food is. So that's something to really think about, is that when you go to a licensed dispensary, you're consuming clean products that have been thoroughly tested by licensed safety compliance facilities. You also have secure transport license, at least in the Midwest, where cultivators like us have to contract with a secure transportation company, basically a company that owns storage space and trucks. That's another way to provide security to people like us, so we're not driving around in our cars with 100 pounds of weed. And then you have event organizers, which I think is an exciting opportunity. You have the micro businesses too, which is new, and event organizers that is new too, which I think is a really exciting opportunity for minorities, because one of the reasons a lot of minorities choose not to go the licensed operator route is because of that intense capital funding that you need at the start for a growth facility. It's not cheap, to buy all these lights and all these fans and all these racks is not cheap at all. But some licenses that have become just available recently are event organizers and micro businesses. Micro businesses is basically you have everything under one roof, cultivation, processing, and you can sell it in that one roof. In the old industry, you had to get every single license separate. And then events are events where you can get a license and people can safely consume at that event or that consumption space. So that's also something that's exciting about about the industry. You know, for years, I'm sure Erik and Roz can kind of agree with me here, is like you have these dispensaries that sell all this beautiful product, but where can you safely smoke, you know, especially or consume edibles with a community? So we're seeing it on the West Coast and in the Midwest. They're introducing these consumption spaces where people that have medical cannabis or recreational cannabis can go and fellowship with others in a safe space. So that's also something that's exciting on the license side. The ancillary side, I leave up to them because they know it better than me.
Yeah, no, that's really good insights, because Florida is a lot different. So I'm gonna lean on Roz and Erik.
Yeah,
Let's
Michigan,
talk about Florida.
Let me tell you, Michigan is a state that is a very progressive state in regards to opportunity. For folks that are wondering why can't we have this in Florida? Why isn't it happening? The reason why we have M4MM and so many other different organizations, if you don't set policy, it all starts at the policy level. You have lawmakers who are responsible for crafting out statutes and drafting language that's going to oversee and monitor this industry. If you have those that craft out language that's too conservative, you will have a model like Florida where you have a vertical business model. And so for everybody who doesn't know, when Rebecca is talking about Michigan has a horizontal business model. That means you can get one license, and there's 12 different categories. And we just did a boot camp in Michigan, by the way. So shout out to all the Michigan folks that we were able to connect with. But you can have one license, you can stack your licenses, you can have multiple licenses, or you may not want to have a license as an operator. In Florida, that's not the same thing. You have to, if you want to be a business owner in Florida legally, you have to apply for a license. And let's not even talk about the fact that you can't even apply for a license in Florida right now. Erik, I'll let you talk about that. But the main thing from vertical and horizontal in Florida and some other different states is a vertical business model. The one license that you get, you're responsible for cultivating, manufacturing, processing, dispensary, and delivery. And in Florida, we don't have an event or consumption or anything of that nature. So it's critical. It's so critical that if we don't set policy that's going to be fair, that's going to be open to make sure that variations of businesses can participate, it ends up kind of stymieing our opportunity. And that's why you get so many questions, Heidi. Why can't I get into the industry? How do I get into the industry? Why is it so difficult? That's why. Because when you have, it's economics 101. The smaller pool of licenses that you have, the cost in order to get that license is going to increase astronomically. And that's not even talking about just filling in and buying all your infrastructure. That's just to get the license. So that's the case of what's going on, kind of a Florida versus a Michigan model.
Right.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. So, Rebecca did a great job of laying out all of the different sides of the industry that are plant touching, right? Those are the different access points if you are in a state where that is available. Roz just laid out that that's not available here. But you have also ancillary businesses. And so those are all of the other things that, you would need in any industry, from your janitorial services to your accounting, marketing services to, you name it, we need it, in this space. And so those are other opportunities for you. If you are a minority business owner who already provides these type of services to other businesses, then it's very likely that there's a business in the cannabis space that you can also provide that service. So that's what we mean by ancillary. Those businesses that are not involved with the plant handling side of the business, but are very much vital to any business being able to run and operate successfully. Okay. The other, part of it, those are like the two lanes in the space, your plant touching as well as your ancillary side. But what I will also say is something that people need to understand very clearly is there are like three different buckets when we talk about the cannabis plant. You have medical marijuana regulatory structures. Okay. That's for a medical marijuana program. And states can have a medical marijuana program, as well as we have some states like Colorado being the first, has an adult use, or we don't really like the term, but you hear it used often, recreational. Okay. So you have your medical marijuana, your adult use, and then you also have the industrial hemp side. Okay. And that has, all of it is cannabis, but we're talking different levels of THC that are found in the plant. And so for the hemp side, anything that is below 0.3% THC is considered hemp. And so we can do a number of different things with the hemp plant, from create medicines, much like you can on the medical marijuana side, to create smokable products like you would see in the adult use. But with the hemp side, you also have the ability to create clothing, to create building materials, to create sustainable fuels, to create so many other things. And so that's something that when you're thinking about how do I get into this industry, I always tell people, first understand those three buckets: medical marijuana, adult use, and hemp, because each have a different regulatory structure that you need to understand. And they're going to have different licensing structures as well. And so here in Florida, we have a vertically integrated medical marijuana program, but we have a horizontally integrated hemp program. So, you just have to understand those frameworks, to find out where the different access points are.
That's really good. So let's talk a little bit about what people say to you when you tell them what industry that you're in. Because we know when it comes to marijuana, cannabis in the Black and Latino and minority communities, we have the stigmas, we have the negative connotations, and, we have this history, right?
Yeah.
So what happens, Roz, when you tell people I work in the cannabis industry?
Well, there's a difference. When I tell them now, it's like they already know and hear about me. They're like, but 5 years ago, listen, I stepped out on faith on this. And let me explain why. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and passed away in 2005. My son has sickle cell anemia. And for me, this was not only about my community, but it was really about my family. I never want to see someone in 2005, cannabis as an option for a cancer patient was not available. And then that conversation was not definitely here in Florida. And so seeing the decline of a parent so quickly, being diagnosed one year and deceased the next year, it stays in your system, it stays in your spirit. And so I always tell people, when you're looking at this industry, understanding your why. Why do you do it? Why are you trying to get into it? It can't be, I want to get high. I just want to make a lot of money. There has to be a why that centers you, so that when you have those ups and downs, those hard times, you're able to just course correct and readjust. And my why was so strong. It was so concrete, tangible, measurable, strong, that when I entered, and I got people that was like, gave me the side eye, even my own friends, and they gave me the side eye with love. It was like, okay, Roz, we'll see what happens. Now it's a different story. But let me tell you, I have been embraced by this industry. The thought of being able to come into an industry at its infancy. You guys, we are at our infancy. This is a marathon. It is not a race. It is not a sprint race. It's 26 miles. We're in, some of us in mile marker 4 or 5, but we're early adopters right now. And so you will see communities are slowly but surely opening up. The NAACP. I've talked to different church pastors or what have you, where they're being more open. I'll be in an Uber and someone asks me, what do you do? And when I give them my car, they're like, I want to talk. So, I mean, it's wonderful to see the stigma of this industry being broken down. The stigma of saying that people just want to get high being broken down. My kid is a card-carrying kid in the state of Florida who I know now, if he has a need for this plant to help him with his wellness, that he won't go to jail, that he won't be ostracized, that he'll have resources, he gets educated, he knows how to manage his health care. What could you ask for more? So, I mean, the night and day difference between 5 years ago and now is huge.
Erik?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing. I think early on, I came from a background of higher education. So I worked at the University of Miami, University of Central Florida, and I worked with young kids and did a lot of mentoring. So I think the first hurdle I had to cross was like getting over my own fear of putting myself out there. Like, how are you going to, on one hand, mentor young kids to do good in their life, and at the same time, you're behind the scenes consuming the plant, you're behind the scenes advocating for this plant. So it was a hurdle for me to get past that and say that it is okay for someone of my stature, someone with my background, to be able to do this, because I get to educate those same students. And it's funny because I now have, when I was working at the university, a couple students who have graduated, gone on to, had their own little career at the time in their profession. They've now come back and asked to work with me in this space. And so I find a lot of my old students have circled back around, and they have an interest, and they see what's going on, and they want to figure out how they can get into the space. But I'll tell you, back in 2015, it was a huge fear. But I think the first time my mother put on my art, show at Art 420, our logo is trademark. It was one of the 8th trademark in the country with a weed plant on it. And my mother put it on, and she went back to school at USF, and she walked across campus with this on, and someone stopped her and asked about it and everything. And her reaction afterwards, I think, was priceless. That's why we do it, is to be able to change somebody like my mom, who's not a consumer, who did hold that stigma, to be able to get her to move in her journey to now where she's looking right now on starting a business in the space as well. So,
wow.
That's progress in my opinion.
That is progress. Rebecca.
Yeah, I came from corporate America, and for many years I had 2 different lives. So I had my LinkedIn life that was full of all this technology and finance and business experience. And then I had my other life where I was secretly going to cannabis conferences. I was secretly doing home grows. I was secretly consuming and educating people about the plant. And then a few years ago, I kind of had a revelation moment after I had a couple of really personal testimonies of healing people from cancer, epilepsy. A lot of my personal family members are my patients. And so once I start hearing these constant testimonies, I'm like, this plant is too powerful for me to hide it. So I put Collexium on my LinkedIn. I put the NCIA on my LinkedIn. I put Normal on my LinkedIn. On my Instagram, I start showing pictures of me smoking cannabis. I start doing videos about what THC is and what CBD is and what is THCV and, what are the different cannabinoids. Because I really realized that I would be doing this plant a disservice if I hid it. And when Roz was talking about finding your why, I think one of the reasons is because I agree, I say this all the time, is because this industry is challenging. It's challenging in so many different ways. It's challenging raising capital. It's challenging navigating different personalities, and it's so challenging. But at the end of the day, you have to find your why and your reason. And at the end of the day, my why is because this is a medicine that I feel can heal our communities of color in so many ways, from a health and wellness standpoint. From a monetary standpoint, we can start producing more business owners in our community so we can stop being workers for everybody. We can improve crime in our community. I mean, cannabis can really heal communities of color. So when I recognized how powerful this plant was, I said, bump it. I'm gonna start putting on my social media. I'm gonna start doing conferences like this because this plant is too powerful. And I think slowly but surely, as conferences happen, seminars happen, workshops happen, episodes on CNBC happen, people are slowly but surely starting to realize that this plant is powerful and it should never have been illegal in the first place.
All right, we're going to come back to that because we're starting to get questions from our live audience. And here's one here. So I think Roz and Erik, you'll be able to answer this one. How would one begin to challenge Florida laws regarding the industry, the vertical versus horizontal, what you talked about? Yeah. And really the question here is, do you see the laws changing in the future in Florida? And then when they say challenge, I guess it would be.
No, they're talking about how do you change policy? How do you change policy? And so we've been talking about medical reform. It's not only the state of Florida. There's so many states that have medical marijuana programs that need reforming. When you start out with a program, you start out, and I will say with good intentions or what have you. But with anything, when you talk about policy and at a policy level where you have policymakers who are putting in these different regulations and rules or what have you, comes a time where you have to go back and reform it. So to answer the question, one of the things that we should be looking at is the policymakers who created the statute for the medical marijuana program being able to first find out who is your state representative and your senator in your district where you live. So that's easy. Go online, put in your zip code, and put in, I want to find my state representative for my district and my state senator, and let them know that you heard about this and we had a conversation about it, and you want to look at how can we reform some of the medical program. But even more importantly, the state of Florida is starting to look at and more conversation about the adult use program, and it's coming. For all y'all that don't think it's coming, the adult use quote unquote recreational program is going to come into the state. I don't know how soon, but now's the time. And I'm super excited. Next week, we'll be having Senator Bracy and Representative Onfroy talking about this more. They have an equity bill that's out there that not only embraces adult use, but specifically, we have to ask for what we want. We want to see social equity, individuals who have been most harmed, communities that have been most impacted, to have an opportunity from a business perspective to be a part of the conversation and to be able to have a fair chance to have a thriving business.
Mm-hmm. Erik, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I'll add to that. Florida's a tough cookie to crack. I'm not gonna lie, and we're no different than any other state when it comes to politics. Well, we are different, but every state has its own issues, and Florida has some very unique issues. We've run into issues every year, which makes it hard to move the needle because we end up having to fight against things like right now in the state legislature. They're proposing a 10% THC cap on the plants, or on what you can get from your medical marijuana program. That's something we as a community have to fight against. We don't want those type of things, because what happens is it becomes an additional tax on the actual patients. If you get capped on the amount of THC you can get at one given time, but your prescribing physician has told you you need another, they tell you need 300 milligrams, but the state says you can only get 50 milligrams. That means you're going to have multiple trips to your dispensary in order to get what your doctor has told you you need. And that's going to cost more. And that's going to lead people in our community to remain in the legacy market and remain at risk for being arrested, remain at risk for consuming cannabis that hasn't been tested for pesticides and those type of things. So these are the types of things that we have to spend a lot of time in our state fighting against. And that sometimes really becomes a distraction to actually putting forth good legislation, because there's a bill out there right now that could do some good, but it hasn't been given a committee hearing, and so thus it can't go anywhere, and it won't reach the floor. So to that person who's asking that question, I tell you, you have to get involved. You can go to your to the state House and the state Senate, and you can track bills that are related to medical marijuana, related to adult use, and see what's going on with them. And you may not be able to drive up to Tallahassee or whatnot, but you can certainly pick up the phone, or you can send the email and let your particular representative know how this impacts you and people in your communities. And that's how we are able to actually impact change. But it's a process of progress. Politics is deliberately designed to be slow, but that means we have to be consistent, and we have to be at the table year in and year out.
Hey, Heidi, normally we have during session, so you guys, just for you to know, we're in session right now in the state of Florida. And normally we would have a lobby day. So we would be able to have people like the question asker to come and join us for a lobby day with M for MM. But due to COVID, there's not that in-person opportunity. And so just know that this session may pass, but the next session comes, and we just need you guys to stay engaged. Like the level of excitement and attention you're paying towards this, it's just nonstop. We have to do it, 365, and then get ready for next session where we can go in and make our voices heard, because we're powerful when we go in as a block and say, hey, listen, what about my community? And I know, Rebecca, the work that you see in Michigan, how powerful when you come together of making things happen.
Yeah, I was just gonna echo everything they saying. They really on point. A lot of people need to realize that these elected officials are public servants. You are the public. They serve you. In Michigan and Detroit, we lobby and advocated for social equity to be written in our adult use ordinance. So when recreational sales start in the spring, social equity is there day one. And we lobbied with our councilmen, with our councilwomen, with our district managers. We went to the mayor's office. And to another point, once two is better than one. And when you consistently have a group of people that are consistently saying, we need equity, they start to say, oh, maybe this is a problem, because we keep hearing it. Because what you need to realize is that the people on the opposite side that don't agree with marijuana, cannabis, they are making their voices heard. And so that, that's why a lot of times, a lot of these elected officials don't know what the cannabis community really needs, because we aren't telling them. But the opposers are definitely at those city council meetings. They are definitely at those neighborhood association meetings. So we need to make sure we're there too, every time.
Rebecca brings up such a great point. I think for us as an organization, we do a lot of work at the state level, but it cannot be underscored how important working at the local level is, because once regulations have been passed at the state level, then it becomes a local game. And we have seen our minority entrepreneurs taken advantage of at the local level, because we weren't there when the local level was developing ordinances, was developing the green zone, allowing for companies to come in and purchase up all the properties in the green zone, and then skyrocket the price of those. So then those become barriers. So it is so important that we are active at every level of politics to make sure that, once the state level has done what it needs to do, it really and truly becomes a local fight, and we have to be active there as well.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about, so you talked a lot about advocacy, and a lot of we haven't really gotten a lot of questions about advocacy, but we do have a lot of questions from our audiences asking about resources available. So, once we get past the policy, the politics, and all of that that's involved in this very fast growing industry, then the rubber hits the road. What do I do? Now that we know what the policy is and we've advocated, what do I do to get in? So can you all tell us a little bit about maybe some of the resources, grants, programs that are available? Let's start with Florida specifically, for folks who want to get in, whether it's, you mentioned the difficulty with trying to get in to do the, touch the plant, but the ancillary and others. Can you all talk about that?
Yeah, I would tell you guys for Florida, again, you're dealing with, right now, we're dealing with the status quo. You have a medical program with some really good providers, don't get me wrong. However, in order to enter into the industry and become a licensed operator, it's not available right now. The application process is not available. It's not available. So if you're interested in this industry, first and foremost, your advocacy hat, you never take it down. You always have it somewhere. It's either over here, it's over here. You always wear it, because you're going to be not only the business builder, but you're going to be the cheerleader for the industry, for the plant. And believe it or not, that becomes your advocate. And so that is going to go with and carry with you resources that you would want to look at and opportunities you want to look at. The hemp industry is wide open, and Erik will talk about that. It's so wide open in Florida. Do you guys know that if you have land, if you want to grow hemp, there was no application fee, no permitting fee. You could have put in your information, did the specifics of the application, and be able to get your land licensed to grow hemp. The processing fee to process and to be a retailer and to sell CBD-based products that come from hemp, there is very nominal in cost. And so we need to figure out where our low-hanging fruit and where the opportunities. And I will tell you, do not look past the fact. Remember the gold rush. The gold rush happened. The miners were getting gold, but it was Levi Strauss. It was the shovel. It was the picks. It was the axe company that was making a killing. And so I tell you guys, whatever your passion is, right, Rebecca, right? So listen, follow your passion. If you've never grown tomatoes before, don't get out here. Like, come on now.
Listen.
This is farming.
Listen, FAMU is about family, right? Listen, I love FAMU. My kid goes there. He's about to graduate. My daughter's about to graduate from high school, and she's starting there in the summer. So it's about family. So family takes care of family. And what we want to do is, we don't want to set you up for failure. We want to set you up for success. So if I can leave one thing with you, think about, if you've never touched a plant, don't really know, not quite sure, think about what you're already doing. It can easily translate. There's so many dollars in the state of Florida for maybe you have an employment services to connect employees to the cannabis jobs. Maybe you do workforce training. Maybe you do marketing. Maybe you do social media. Maybe you buy the promo products. Maybe you have a money processing to process all of the transactions that happen. There's so many opportunities for you to be able to do very well in this industry that's not touching the plant. And I just want to, make sure that we impart that with you guys from a resource perspective. I will tell you, of course, you have a couple of books, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry by Dashida Dawson. And I'll put it in the chat, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry by Dashida Dawson. She is a wonderful lady that's just doing brilliant things. Used to be our chief strategy officer. Her book is on Amazon. Erik will tell you about his book. You want to know about the numbers and the data, go to mpp.org. If you want data and understanding what the law says and what the policy says, M as in Mary, P as in Paul, P as in Paul.org is a great resource. And Erik and Rebecca, I know you guys can share as much, but my goodness, guys, just know the sky's the limit, and just be judicial about how you figure out where your entry point is.
This is good because we're actually getting questions. We have a question from an Omari asking about what are the steps to get into the industry? What can a cannapreneur? Here we go, right here. So let's keep this conversation going because these are the questions we're getting right now.
Absolutely. Erik, on the hemp side,
I was gonna say I dabble very little on the medical marijuana and the adult use side, but I am 10 toes deep on the hemp side. I am all in on hemp. Because I believe that it is going to be a much bigger industry down the road than anything we're talking about that we can roll up and smoke. So I focus on the hemp side in particular. People talk about resources. I have a book out there called Sowing Seeds That Grow, and we cover some of the business basics of how to get your hemp startup going. So that's a great resource. You can go to erikrange.com, ERIKRANGE.com. And you can pick up that. I do coaching as well for that. But in terms of resources, when people ask about resources, what they're really asking is, how can I get some money to get into this space? Let's keep it real. We said we family here, right? So I know what y'all are looking for, right? Y'all, these books are great. It's good. Go get those books. But y'all really want to know, how can you fund your business? Well, if you are on the adult use side or you're on the medical marijuana side, I have bad news, but again, we keeping it real. You just better have some wealthy friends. That means you need to get out there and network, extend your network to make sure that you have people in that network that you can go to and who can invest into your business. That's really going to be the only way that you're able to do it. If you are on the industrial hemp side, which is legal at the federal level, then there may be other opportunities for you. There are some things that are opening up at the USDA level for hemp farmers. I would not bank, starting my business on that, but I would certainly look into how you can take advantage of that. In terms of small business loans, again, hemp being legal, you can get SBA loans and so on. But again, I would not bank starting my business on that either. But on the hemp side, where we have a little bit of an advantage as others don't, we are able to go to banks. And again, there are a few banks, there are not a ton of banks, but we are able to get loans from traditional institutions, banking institutions now. And so you need to focus on getting your personal credit right. And then once you get your personal credit right, or at the same time, build your business credit profile, build relationships with some banks, and then go to the bank and get a traditional loan like you would get in any other industry, because this is a legal industry. But again, you want to take those steps of getting your personal finances in order, and then start small. Find family and friends who can invest at a very small level, $5,000, $10,000. Get yourself to a minimum viable product. That means get yourself to some type of prototype, and then take it and get some more investment. And show that way you've shown that you have some traction. You've shown that you're willing to put in the hard work, and then you'll start to see the money roll in. But to say you're going to get money right out the gate is not, most businesses don't work that way. So I hope that helps.
I think that was helpful. You told me a lot more than I knew, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers as well. Rebecca, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, they are so good with these answers. What I would add is In the adult use and medical cannabis market, to Roz's and Erik's point, since it's still federally illegal, a lot of traditional finance and opportunities are just unavailable, are unavailable. So starting with family and friends is one. There's so many different ways to raise money now. There are definitely different debt structures you can do now and funding your equipment purchases or your construction purchases. That's something that we personally did because equipment and construction is not plant touching. So we can get financing for those type of things. So there are definitely ways to be creative in financing your plant touching business, but research opportunities that are available in your community, because there are certain social equity programs that do give some type of monetary resources. In Michigan, even though there's no funds really available, we do get a percentage off the application and licensing fees, if you're a qualified social equity applicant. So that is resources, if you will. It does decrease your capital startup costs.
Yeah.
So also research your local area, determine where you will maybe want to start your cannabis business and research what programs are specific to that state or city or something like that.
Okay. Well, we have two questions that I want to pose. One is regarding the medical marijuana treatment centers in Florida. And if my team kind of post that question about the medical marijuana treatment centers. And the question is, do they give the market to the MMTCs, which are the medical marijuana treatment centers, or to a horizontal market? Can anyone respond to that?
Yeah, so looks like Ethel says, do they give the market to the MMTCs or to a horizontal market? So I'm not quite sure what she's asking. No one is giving anything to anyone. The MMTCs is a designation that is a part of the statute that means medical marijuana treatment centers. And that is what an operator in the state of Florida is identified as the MMTC. And so by the fact that they've put their application in, they have been graded or they've been selected or chosen, because there's some MMTCs that were actually chosen due to a lawsuit, or I shouldn't say chosen, but they were grandfathered in due to a lawsuit that the governor was able to settle. These people that have a license, they're operators. And as an operator, you're not given the business, but you're charged with being able to scale up your cultivation, to be able to create products and create a retail establishment, not in one building, in different buildings or whatever. But you're going to have to be, you have to show that your testing of your products, the efficacy of your products, the testing of your crop. There's a lot that goes with it. So nothing is given. I can't imagine, mind you, the value of the licenses in the state of Florida are anywhere between $45 to $55, $65 million. And that's just paper. So that's the value of a Florida license currently right now. Currently in Florida, we have over 465,000 patients on service. We have a state with 22 million people. So you can imagine that, again, the infrastructure and the cost to get bring your business to market is expensive. If they could go horizontal, if they could outsource business to other different businesses, I'm thinking some of the MMTCs I've talked to were like, yeah, we would do it because it makes sense for us from a business perspective. Yeah. But the state of Florida is very specific. Excuse me. Very specific. You cannot outsource. You cannot contract. You cannot do. If you have a license to operate, you must do it all. Yeah. And therefore, because of that policy, going back to policy, because of that policy, that's why you don't see a horizontal market or an opportunity for a horizontal market in Florida.
Yeah, I think that's our good friend Ethel Rowland at Florida Cannabis Action Network, which is the oldest advocacy group here in the state of Florida. So shout out to Florida Can and everybody over there who's doing great work. I'm sure they're in Tallahassee right now as we speak, helping to move the needle. I think she was referencing those bills that we mentioned that aren't getting committed right now. And there were a couple bills that were put out, I think, this year that, fell into the same bucket where they just didn't get committed. And I do think, Ethel, that there was a bill that, created a horizontal structure. Again, she's very familiar with how things work here in Florida. So, she knows we still have a very uphill battle. But thanks for the question, Ethel.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to share for everyone who's asking questions, we do want to encourage you to go to the Florida Department of Health's Office of Medical Marijuana Use. They kind of lay out a lot of the rules, regulations, laws regarding medical marijuana in Florida. It's a great place to go to find out what is allowed in the state of Florida when it comes to medical marijuana. We have another question from Terrell is asking, he says, I have 25 acres available for lease or rent for medical marijuana growth. How do I reach whoever may be interested in leasing or renting land? And I'm assuming he's in Florida.
So the first thing is that you do have companies right now who are operators who might be looking for land. So first, where you're located. And then the 25 acres, is it on water? Is it access to electricity, access to water? So some of the basic things that you want to ask, is it in an industrial area? Is it on agricultural land? And once you answer all those questions, and if you can answer that, it's just like with anything that you do when you're looking to put your land out there for industry, having maybe a cannabis realtor, someone that knows about cannabis and hemp in the state of Florida, that knows how to maybe shop around your land. I mean, and then you also, if you go to the website, the Office of Medical Marijuana Use for the state of Florida, you can pull up the operators. Every operator who has a license in the state of Florida, if you want to do your own work, pull it up. You can get their contact information. Take that one-sheeter that talks about your land, dress it up, make it attractive as to why you want to come and put your and lease my land, and send it out to every single person that's on that list, right? Now, if you don't do that part, you also have an opportunity in hemp, and I'll let Erik talk about from a hemp perspective, what's the best thing to think about.
Yeah, there are a couple hemp associations that are coming up here in Florida. I would recommend joining those. Definitely get plugged into different networks of people who are in the hemp space. I get people all the time who come to me in the same situation. Hey, I got land. I'm not going to farm on it, but do you know anybody who might? But then I also get people who come in and like, listen, I don't own land, but I just want to get into growing. And that becomes a relationship. So, you just have to, really and truly, this industry is about networking. It's about community. I say all the time, find your tribe, find a group of people you can build with and create, like an ecosystem to be sustainable. Because, that's the other part about this industry. We can expect consolidation to happen, meaning big businesses to merge together and buy up smaller businesses. We can expect those things to happen. We can expect large corporations from outside the industry to get into the industry. And so what does that mean for the little guy? How do we as a small business be able to survive? And that's really and truly by creating our own ecosystems where we're working together versus competing and trying to, find ways that we create sustainability together. So if you're not already involved, in the industry, get yourself involved. And that just takes, as simple as joining a few organizations, meeting some people, and very quickly conversations can, start to happen for you.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add one thing just about this whole land piece is two things I would do, because I look at it from a cultivation standpoint. So get a land survey and also get some environmental inspections, get the water tested, because me as a cultivator, I'm not gonna come buy your land if I can't grow on it, or if I have to spend a lot of money to do the renovations. And then also find out the zoning. At least here in Michigan, you can have 100 acres of land, but if it's not in the correct zone, you can't grow cannabis on it. You can't have any type of cannabis facility on it. So also figure out the zoning and if it could even work with a licensed cannabis business.
Yep. And especially if you have a relationship with the city council, wherever you are, or the mayor's office, someone like that, you want to make sure that you just do your due diligence, because the worst thing you want to happen is you have someone that's interested and you don't have the folks at the city level, the local level that would support that type of industry or that type of business coming in. So you definitely, do your homework.
Okay. We have another question from Denise asking about what are your thoughts on cannabis certification programs?
So what she's probably talking about is, and Denise, hopefully I'm kind of putting this right in the right frame. But if you're talking about educational certification programs, give you, you may be someone that has consumed before and you realize the health benefits. And first and foremost, and going back to Mary, and thank you, Mary, for the strong job you do about the use of cannabis, lawful and unlawful, just magnificent work that you're doing throughout the state. Get your card first and foremost. If you have the need, get your card. That's important. If you don't have the information and the education to understand the industry perspective and the economics and how to enter and what some of your options are, I do think some of the programs, the certifications, the horticulture, like you may not know how to grow, but you want to grow. But if you have some type of baseline education and it doesn't cost you, like, you know, I'm not saying to go pay $5,000 and $8,000 for a program. Now programs are very affordable, but if there's an area that you can beef up your education level and be exposed to things that you haven't been exposed to from a legalized, regulated market, I really support it. And I know there's some programs out there that I could definitely recommend for you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else that you all want to add? I mean, we're still getting a couple more questions in, and we talked about a range of everything. We talked about, you know, the need to be vocal on issues in your local community and at the state level, wherever you are. We talked about the different resources and programs and mentorships and networking that you can get involved in. And then, you know, we touched on a little bit about, you know, since marijuana has been legalized in many states, whether it's for medical use or the adult use, we really hadn't gotten into, well, how has that really impacted people of color, you know, minority communities? Is that something that we can maybe dive in a little bit on? Like, we know right now that in this industry, less than 4% of the owners and entrepreneurs are people of color. You know, what else can we do, or what are you all doing outside of what you mentioned before? Let's talk about that. I mean, even go down into the communities themselves. What are you all seeing and hearing?
I mean, well, I think, you know, minorities have been slow to get into this industry. There are a number of barriers that exist, but, you know, cannabis isn't unique in that regard. There's always barriers for minorities to entering business. We do have our own unique barriers in the cannabis industry as well. But, you know, I'm encouraged because I have seen so many, in particular, Black women, Black females, really and truly start ancillary businesses. More and more are starting plant touching businesses.
We got Rebecca here.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I celebrate women quite a bit. In fact, my goal this year in 2021 is to help 50 African-American women get their CBD or hemp business going in the space. So, you know, that's partly why I wrote my book, Sowing Seeds That Grow, as well as why I do a group business coaching where the majority of my members are African-American women, where we're going through the steps of how do you get your business going, you know, working with each other, troubleshooting with each other. So I, you know, like I said, I'm encouraged because our communities are starting to wake up. It's been slow, and I hope that pace increases. But, you know, like Roz said, pastors are now starting to have this conversation now. Employers are starting to have this conversation. Traditional organizations like the NAACP, like Black Chambers of Commerce, the organizations we've turned to and trusted for many years are now starting to get attuned to the conversation. And so that's always encouraging. But you know, again, I'd be lying to you if I told you I wasn't at times a little frustrated at how slow we are to get to these conversations, because we're going to look up in a couple years and it is going to be like the .com era, and we would have missed out. You know, and this is why I talk a lot about hemp, because as much as we're still fighting on the medical marijuana side and the adult use, and in many regards we've been locked out, hemp is so wide open right now, and I want more and more of us to get into this and take advantage of it early on versus later.
Yeah, I was just going to add, you know, one of the reasons minorities have such a challenging barrier to entry into the industry is because oftentimes our community is uneducated in so many ways about cannabis, whether it's the health and wellness benefits of the plant, or whether it's the just understanding the business of the cannabis industry. A lot of lobbying I do with our city officials is just educating them on our supply chain, educating them on what happens after we grow and process, educating them on how we do odor mitigation in the community, educate them about how we do community benefits programs for our community, and we clean up, we do gardens and all that kind of stuff. So, an important thing is educating our communities of color, because I understand that a lot of our elected officials that are of color, or even our community leaders that are of color, are scared of marijuana because of all their life they've been portray marijuana in a negative way. If you smoke this, you're gonna go to jail, or you're gonna start doing cocaine, or
or marijuana is the devil.
Exactly. So slowly but surely, we just need to educate people about the positive aspects of cannabis on all sides, because I realize in my lobbying efforts as an operator and entrepreneur, when I go in and just educate, they're like, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was only 2 of y'all Black growers. I didn't know that y'all do odor mitigation and community benefits programs. I didn't know. So a lot is education, people. I've done a lot of work with like our elderly community in Detroit, with like Block Club associations, a lot of older Black women who are not fans of cannabis, but once they started to understand that, oh, this can help me with my arthritis, or, oh, I can take some cannabinoids that are not non-psychoactive. Like, people don't even know what that means. So, educating people on how they can, intersect cannabis in their life. And it's just so many different ways. And education, I think, is key.
Yeah.
I would just wrap it up by saying, the industry itself, it presents barriers that are just innate to the industry. When your first comers are the ones that are able to finance, fund, and then they fund it and they build the infrastructure. And then when they're growing, they're bringing in their own peer friends to join them. And if we're not a part of that conversation, we're going to see where the scale is. 90% of the 95% ownership is white men. And maybe I shouldn't say white men, but white people in general. And you have that 5% of people of color, and maybe a little bit more, but African Americans, we're around about 2 to 4%. And I would tell you this, that the industry, the opportunity, not only from a growth perspective, but also from a social justice perspective, of being able to create, repair the harms of individuals that have been most affected. We do expungement clinics, and we see individuals that have a small possession, just something small that has hindered them for all of their lives. And so the industry also has a responsibility, and that responsibility is to lessen some of those harms. And unfortunately, a lot of those harms are in the Black community. It is our communities that we see that have been disproportionately impacted. They've been targeted. Individuals that have been there have been targeted. So as well as creating an economic opportunity, we're also looking at a social justice perspective. And then, of course, we cannot forget, and Heidi, as I wrap up, the health and wellness benefit of this plant. We lead with that. We talk from that perspective. We as an organization, and I encourage you guys, if you want to join an organization, I can't think of a better one than M for MM, but we really talk about the medical efficacy of this plant and how it can make a difference. And if we really stay in tune, and from that perspective, I think we will break down stigma. We will see more engagement in our community, and we'll see more adoption of this plant from a health and wellness perspective.
Yeah, and this program is actually so that we can do the public education and break down some of the stigmas and create more understanding. So
Sure.
thank you all so much for being guests on
Heidi,
these conversations. Yes, Eric, you wanted to
can I add something really quick to that?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
As I was thinking a little bit more about the question in terms of the impact since legalization, you have to remember, medical marijuana has only been legal since the late 90s. Adult use has only been legal less than 10 years, right? Yeah. But this plant has been, illegal for over 70 years, okay? The impact that we really need to pay attention to is the impact of prohibition and how that has impacted our communities, how it has taken and broken up families, how it has incarcerated our Black and brown, men, how it has kept us, in communities that are food deserts. that have, find ways to, we live in communities with infrastructure that is failing. We don't have access to clean water, to clean, healthy foods. The cannabis plant itself is in part a part of the conversation that remedies all of that. When we talk about expungements and restoring the rights of our people who have been incarcerated because of it, when we talk about using this plant to grow and how it phytoremediates the soil and cleans the soil and cleans the air at the same time, we're dealing with a global climate crisis. Cannabis is a part of that conversation. When we talk about the food deserts in our community, I grow hemp for food because there's so many different derivative food products that we can get from this plant. In addition to the medicinal benefits, in addition to the economic benefits where we can get tax dollars to rebuild our community, what I want people to really take away and understand is this plant has a role in almost every conversation about every issue that impacts our community, and we need to make sure that we're front and center for it. Cannabis was deemed essential during the pandemic, okay? But how many dispensaries exist in our communities where we get access to that? How many of those programs have affordability programs where we can access these things safely? We have to be a part of this conversation because it's not just about getting high. It's about rebuilding our, communities, healing our people, and really and truly putting ourselves in a better position moving forward for the future. So I really hope that sinks in with some folks.
Wow, that was powerful, Erik. And I'm so glad you touched on the piece about the black men and the impact, to families in our community. So thank you. What a great way to close the program. Thank you. I want to thank all of you all for being guests on this Conversations on Cannabis virtual forum. We are going to share your information in the comment box after the forum so our viewers can contact you directly. And thank you to everyone who watched this program and who's watching it after we post it online. Don't forget to tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comment box. When you complete the survey, your name will be entered into a drawing for tickets to an iHeart Music event, courtesy of our partners at iHeartMedia. And again, we want to remind everyone to please visit the Florida Department of Health's Office of Medical Marijuana Use website to learn more about medical marijuana in Florida. And then also resources that can help you obtain legally a medical marijuana card, as well as the qualifying conditions to get the card. And for information in general, we encourage you to go to the Florida A&M University Mary website, which is the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative that's bringing you this program. Be sure to check out their website. And I thank you all. Have a good afternoon. Thanks so much for watching.